Today, we are diving into one of the most wild, unsettling, and kind of hidden stories of the Cold War. It's a story about how, in the race to beat one enemy, America went and recruited the absolute monsters of another. This is the incredible story of Hitler's master spy and how he ended up at the very heart of American intelligence.
So picture this. World War II is literally just over. The smoke has barely cleared, and a U.S. Army plane touches down right outside Washington. The man who steps off that plane? None other than Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's top intelligence officer on the Russian front. But get this, he's not in handcuffs, he's not a prisoner of war, he's a VIP guest, being welcomed by American officials. And yeah, that's the big question here, isn't it? Why? Why on earth would you roll out the red carpet for a guy who, just a few weeks earlier, was one of your deadliest enemies? To get that, you have to understand the absolutely incredible deal he was about to put on the table. All right, let's get into it. Because Gehlen didn't show up empty-handed. He came with an offer that he just knew the Americans would not be able to resist. You've got to remember, the entire world had just flipped on its head. The old enemy, Nazi Germany, was in ruins. But a brand new threat was already looming large, the Soviet Union. The embers of World War II were still warm, and the Cold War was kicking off. And America desperately needed spies and secrets on its new rival. And this is where Gehlen, this shrewd survivor, played his hand like a master. See, while Germany was collapsing, he took his organization's most precious asset. We're talking all of its spy files on the Soviet Union, and he literally buried them in the Austrian Alps. This was his bargaining chip, a massive treasure trove of secrets, plus the entire network of spies he controlled. He was basically offering America a turnkey spy agency aimed right at Moscow. And if you read Gehlen's own words, it's pretty clear what he was really after. This wasn't just about saving his own neck. No, he saw a path to bring a defeated Germany back into the game, to make it an essential partner for the West against this new communist threat. I mean, it was incredibly cynical, but you have to admit, it was a brilliant move. And this is what's known as a Faustian pact, a deal with the devil. The US was so worried about the Soviets that it decided to shake hands with some truly evil people. They'd get Gehlen's knowledge, sure, but the moral price tag, well, as we're about to see, it was huge, and the consequences would ripple out for decades. Because what exactly was America buying here? It wasn't just some dusty files and intel. It was people. And the people in Gehlen's network, they were the absolute worst of the Nazi regime. So the Gehlen Organization, as it was called, was basically Hitler's spy agency, just resurrected on American soil. It was packed with former SS officers, Gestapo agents, and flat-out wanted war criminals. Now, America had told Gehlen, hey, don't hire those guys. He promised he wouldn't, and then he did it anyway, immediately. And his new American bosses just kind of looked the other way. And let's get specific, because this is where it gets really dark. One of the guys on the payroll was Klaus Barbie, a man so cruel, he was known as the Butcher of Lyon. This is a man who was personally responsible for the torture and murder of thousands of people, including children. And now, he was working for the good guys. I mean, the kind of people we're talking about is just chilling. Get a load of this quote. It describes another one of Gehlen's hires, a guy named Dr. Franz Six. And that description comes from Adolf Eichmann himself, one of the main architects of the Holocaust. Six was a monster who led a death squad that slaughtered Jewish intellectuals. And another one, Emil Augsburg. His boss was Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. Augsburg's specialty was something his Nazi files called special tasks. Let's be very clear about what that means. That was a euphemism for mass murder. His job was to run assassination squads. These weren't soldiers, they were professional killers. So here's the bottom line. America had hired a network of unrepentant mass murderers to fight the Cold War. And you better believe the kind of intelligence they produced would go on to shape world history in a very, very dangerous way. The influence this group had was just staggering. At one point, it's estimated that 70%, 70, of all of NATO's intelligence on the Soviet Union was coming from this one single source, from Gehlen's network of ex-Nazis. The entire Western defense strategy was almost completely dependent on them. But was any of it good? Well, according to insiders like former CIA officer Victor Marchetti, absolutely not. His take is brutally honest. He said it was basically hyped up Russian boogeyman junk. He said the CIA loved Galen because he just fed them exactly what they wanted to hear, scary stories to justify their existence. And that boogeyman junk had very real-world consequences. Galen's reports were constantly screaming about imminent Soviet invasions, exaggerating their military power. This fear-mongering fueled the arms race. It was used to justify massive military budgets, and it pushed the Cold War to terrifyingly tense moments, all based on intel that was often just made up. But here it comes. This is the ultimate mind-blowing irony. The very organization that was hired to protect the West from the Soviets was completely full of Soviet double agents. It was an absolute sieve. So for decades, while Galen was feeding America scary stories, he was also, without even knowing it, compromising the very national security he was being paid to protect. It's just unbelievable. So you might think this all just, ended when the Berlin Wall came down, but that's not how this story goes. The legacy of this deal with the devil casts a really long shadow, one that actually stretches all the way to today. See, the organization just changed shape. After a decade on the CIA's payroll, in 1956 it was officially handed over to the West German government. But it didn't go away, it was just rebranded. Today, it operates as Germany's official foreign intelligence service, the BND. A direct line from Hitler's spy ring to a modern intelligence agency in a NATO country. And its legacy in America is just as deep. The tactics of Hitler's master spy, his focus on propaganda, on dirty tricks, even on political assassination, they became part of the CIA's playbook. But maybe more importantly, it set a really dangerous precedent, that it's okay to recruit morally bankrupt, unsavory people if it's, expedient. And that idea of expediency might have served an even darker purpose. There are some researchers who argue that Galen's organization also functioned as a cover for Odessa, that legendary underground railroad for helping Nazi war criminals escape justice. The theory is that Galen's deal with America gave him the perfect cover to help preserve the Nazi cause, just underground.
Which leaves us with this final, really difficult question. The West did win the Cold War, but this story forces us to ask, what was the real price of that victory? What deals are acceptable? And what happens when, in your fight against one kind of monster, you decide to hire another?